I think there is this sacredness around that happens in meditation, that we think of the time and this moment, this one moment being so precious as we sit and meditate and try to become more aware. And then we get off of our bolster, and it's as if like we're judging what moments in our life are more precious than others. And I think one of the gifts that I've had this year, and that I want for all of you too, is this understanding of every single moment is worthy of your awareness. Every moment, even the ones that are really painful. Hi, this week's show is going to be all about mindfulness and meditation. And before you roll your eyes, you're like, oh, no, thank you. I want you to just give this a chance for a second. I really believe, and I'll get into this in the show, that this is the big thing we're all sort of missing in the year, and that we're all being called to step into. We all have an opportunity this year to be a catalyst of change for good. And I think it truly begins with becoming more conscious and aware of our own thoughts and our own actions. And if every single person on the planet did this, I know we could have huge ripple effects in the world. And so I'm just inviting you to listen to today's episode with just an open mind and maybe a beginner's mind, and just consider what it would be like for you and for those around you if you maybe dabbled with a little home practice, like a little meditation practice. So I'll get into it in the show about why I'm so into mindfulness and meditation, my story about it, and I'll share with you some tools to get started in your own home practice. If you are interested, though, in going deeper into meditation and learning how to live more consciously in 2025, and I don't know, just become a little more aware, I'm going to invite you to join our 4-week holistic mindfulness program that begins January 20th. It is a 4-week deep dive into all things mindful living. And so it's a holistic program. So we'll talk about a lot more than just meditation, but meditation is going to be our foundation of the program. You will be doing it surrounded by a community of other women who are also trying to live more consciously. I will share with you all the tips and tricks and tools that I know. You'll get a lot of personalized attention from me and a library of resources, not just with meditation, but also with some mindful movement, some of my favorite recipes, other things that I have incorporated over the past couple of years to just live a more conscious life. And if you are interested, there is a link in the show notes. It is called WithIn. We begin January 20th, and I really hope to see you there. All right, let's get into the show. Okay, I have no idea what day it is. Well, what's even happening right now? We're in that weird phase of the week between Christmas and New Year's, which is like the week where time doesn't exist. Like there's no such thing as time. I don't know what day of the week it is. I've been living in the same sweatpants for I don't even know how long. I'm wondering if I've even washed them. We are living on pasta and cookies. The kids have been home from school for what feels like forever, and I'm kind of loving it. I'm not gonna lie. It's funny because my oldest is 16 now, and my youngest is 9, 8 or 9. Oh my gosh, you guys! I don't know how old he is. Don't tell anybody. Okay, well I'm saying that publicly. So anyway, I don't know how young my youngest is right now, but see, this is what happens to your brain the week before Christmas and New Year's. Ooh. Anyway, we've had a great holiday. It's been really special. The holidays used to stress me out. And don't get me wrong, they of course still can, but I think it's because the kids are getting older, or maybe I don't know, I'm in this really sappy phase where I don't know, just feeling like melancholy that time is moving so quickly. It's going so fast. I just wanted to slow down. I'm 45 and be 46. And it feels like this is the year that finally like things are hitting me of like, this is it. This is your life. Enjoy it before you miss it. And so even when it feels chaotic, I'm still like, can have that moment where you step back and be like, God, I'm so lucky. One day this is going to be gone. And these are going to be the days I wished for. And so I try to remember that. I say it to JB all the time. I'm like, these are the days we're going to miss. And I am starting to appreciate it more. Anyway, it's not at all what I came here to talk to you about. I say that because this is going to be the last episode I'm recording in 2024. And you were probably listening to this in 2025. So happy New Year. Happy new whatever. Happy January. A new calendar, a new chance to begin again. I have been thinking about what I wanted to share with you, like what would be the most helpful for you and for me and for all of us moving forward in the new year. And I know right away what I wanted to talk to you about because it really is for me what I think is the most important thing that we can all be doing. Not to be dramatic, but kind of, I believe it's true. This really is what I think is the thing that we're all missing. And it's mindfulness, it's awareness. I know, right? It sounds so cheesy and so dumb. But it really is the thing, I think, if we were all to move into the new year, being like, what's one gift I could give the world? Like, what's one thing I could do to help change the world? And I really think it is becoming more conscious, more aware. And we do that through mindfulness and the practice of meditation. I have seen it transform my own life. And I really believe that if every single person in the world, all of us, you, your siblings, your friends, your kids, your partners, if we all said, this is the year I'm going to become more aware of my thoughts, more aware of my actions, more aware of my habits, more aware of the words that I speak and how I maneuver myself through the world. And I held myself accountable and I really became aware of myself. I think we'd have huge ripple effects in the world, not just in yourselves, but also in your home, in your communities, in your churches, in your office spaces, and in the world at large. I think culturally and socially and politically, we are at a time of, I don't know, just volatility. And there's a lot of unrest and there's a lot of hurt and anger and fear. And there's also a lot of love and beauty, not to say that that doesn't exist as well. But I really think that this is the moment in time we're all being called to just be more conscious and aware of all of it. And I think it translates then to how we treat people, how we speak to people, to the way we vote, to the way we handle arguments, to the way we treat ourselves, the way we eat, the way we move our bodies. Like it affects it all. Like there's nothing in our world that isn't touched or can't be impacted in a positive way by becoming more aware and more conscious. So, this episode is all about mindfulness. Yay, fun, right? I know, I know. Don't go anywhere. Please don't go anywhere. I know. I knew as soon as I decided to do this episode, I was like, oh, people are going to eye roll and be like, no, thank you, not interested, which is to be expected. I just want you to know, like, that's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault. Like, the world of meditation and mindfulness has kind of been hijacked by like, I don't know, some of the wellness spaces, like you see the way they portray meditation and mindfulness, and I see it and I'm like, wait a second, that's not what it really is. And I also think there's a whole school of thought that we have around how good we either are at it or whether we can do it or whether we're interested, whether we have time for it. I know there are many of you listening who probably heard me just say the word meditation and mindfulness, and you're like, I'm so bad at it. I'm not interested. I don't have time. It's not for me. Like, I get it. I'm happy for you, Katy, but no thanks. And I just want you to know that's to be expected. We have a lot of resistance around this. I don't really know where it comes from, but culturally there's a lot of resistance around the idea of mindfulness and meditation. And I think we all can agree it would be good for us, but I don't think we can all agree that we're going to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're like, yeah, I heard about that thing and happy for you, but like, I don't really think that's going to work for me. So I just wanted to share with you that if you were debating, like, turning off this episode and not tuning in and not listening, or you're not interested, or you feel some resistance, awesome. This episode is for you. Like, I got you. I got you. That's what this episode is all about. If we think about who meditation or mindfulness is for, it's for everybody. Like, if you are breathing and you are on this planet, it is for you. Whether you are 99 years old or you are a little baby, a little toddler, if you're a kiddo listening to this, whether you're able-bodied or your body is struggling, whatever religion you are, whatever nationality you are, whatever age you are, whatever, I don't care. It doesn't matter. If you are breathing and you are alive, this is for you. And this will have positive impact in your life. I promise you. You just have to commit to doing it and showing up. It costs you nothing. You don't need any special tool. You don't even need a special teacher. Like, I'm going to share with you just some things that I know. And I know very little. I know very little. I'll share with you what I know. And besides that, like, all you need is you. That's it. It's just you. No tools, no equipment. You don't need to go anyplace. You don't need to sign up for some program. You don't need to read some book. You don't need to buy something. You don't need some special bolster, some crystals. You don't need to burn sage, like nothing, nada. All it requires is you. And just believing that if you really slow down and we're brave enough to get comfortable with yourself, amazing things would happen. It's happened for me. It's happened for many people I know. And I promise you it can happen for you. So moving into 2025, moving into this year, whenever you're listening to this episode, I am just asking you to just consider what it would look like if this year you gave mindfulness a shot. If you said, I'm going to become a little more aware, I'm going to become a little more conscious, what that would look like for you. Okay. So let's just start from there. I'm going to share a little bit with you about like how I got into meditation and mindfulness, kind of like what it is, what it isn't, and then just give you a few little nuggets about if you wanted to start doing this on your own. Okay? Because I promise you, you do want to start doing it on your own. And then I'll get you out of here. How does that sound? All right. Okay. So let's get into it. If you are brand new to me and this is your first time listening to me, you may not know a little bit about my backstory. And I'm going to give a really abridged version of what got me into mindfulness and meditation. But if you're curious, you can go back and listen to my very first podcast episode. It's just episode 1. And you can hear a little bit about kind of why I got into meditation and mindfulness and how it affected my life. But for our time together now, I'll just give you a really short version. I've always had anxiety as a young woman. I don't remember ever a time where I didn't feel a little bit anxious. And I don't know that I would have known that it was anxiety because I don't think we would have had language for it. So I was born in 79. So in like the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, like we definitely weren't using the language anxiety. Like no one was saying, I mean, maybe people were, but I wasn't. I wasn't in therapy. I was not reading like self-development book, but I knew enough to know that there was this like pit in my stomach and this anxiousness to always be on and to always be self-perfecting and self-optimizing and like being the best version of myself that I possibly could. Shocker, I know. I pushed myself really hard, whether it was going to be like I was going to be thinner, I was going to be prettier, I was going to be smarter, I was going to be more successful. I was going to like, if it was something that could be better, I was going to do it better. I pushed myself really, really hard. And I have 4 young kids who aren't so young anymore, as we've established. So we just shared earlier, I don't even know their ages, but a decade ago, they were really young and they were all really close in age. And you take the combination of, decades worth of pushing myself really hard, too hard, and 4 young kids. And at the time, I was a young mother who didn't know how to take care of herself. And I was probably drinking more than I should have at the time to cope with postpartum depression, which I'm sure I had, but I didn't know. And not eating well, not sleeping. And again, like just the stress that I felt as a young mom to, I don't know, be the best mother I could and create the most perfect childhood for my kids drove me to a point where I had a nervous breakdown one winter evening on our floor. And as I really look back, to be honest, I say that I had one, but I actually know that I had many. It wasn't just like one and done. It was multiple of them. I can remember many different times being with my kids and being home alone with them late in the evenings and I remember this one night and poured a glass of wine and the kids were crying. And I just remember like being so overwhelmed and crying on the kitchen floor. And the kids, my 2 youngest, at the time, one was a newborn and one was, 15 months old, 16 months old, and like sitting next to me crying as well. And like, we were just all crying. And you have these out of body, I don't know if you've ever had one of those like out of body experiences where you can witness yourself, but you can't do anything about it. And so you feel paralyzed. And so I just was laying there, like watching the scene and feeling just helpless. And so really scary feeling for anyone, but especially for a mother with young kids. I just felt really out of control, really out of control. And so I think that year per se, those different episodes that I had were really my rock bottom and what ended up being my catalyst for becoming what is now my meditation practice. So becoming more aware and more conscious and making some different choices. And it started really small. I started making different choices with my diet and getting more exercise in and moving my body and asking for help and getting more sleep and putting the glass of wine down. I just started making really small choices and changes. And at the time, I also became a yoga instructor. And so meditation had been introduced to me through my yoga teacher training. I'm also a certified meditation teacher. Not that matters, but so this world of like meditation had been introduced to me through those trainings. And I took it really seriously. When I was in that training to become a yoga instructor, we had to meditate 30 minutes a day. And you tell me to do something, as we just established, since I'm so type A, I will do it, 100%. I will give it my 100%. And I did that with meditation. I really took it seriously. And I did the 30 minutes every single day for however many months I was in that training for. And I really felt a major change and I loved it. But with anything in our lives, things don't work and don't stick until we're ready for it. And I wasn't really ready for it then. And so it was something I was dabbling with, and I would sit on my bolster, I don't know, here or there, a couple times a month. There would be like spurts where I do it every day for a week and then I'd stop. And it just kind of like yo-yoed in and out of my life, similarly to how sobriety sort of did. It was just kind of like, I know it's good for me. I know I should do it, but I just didn't want to. I just felt a lot of resistance around it. I don't know why. I think it's because it's not like this shiny thing. It's not like, when you go to a workout class or something and you feel like you go and you have to show up and there's other people there and you have to do it because you signed up, and then you get this like big dopamine hit afterwards. Meditation isn't always like that. I mean, there's many times it's not like that. There's many times, well, no one's forcing you to do it. You're not signing up. Like, you just have to show up in the morning and do it. And so it's really easy to be like, I'll do it later. And then on top of it, you don't always get this immediate dopamine hit. There are many times, especially in the beginning for me, when I'd sit and meditate and my mind would just race the whole time. Like, it's just racing. And my body is just anxious and uncomfortable, and my back's hurting, and my knees speaking to me, and my foot is falling asleep. And I'm like, God, this is awful. Like, why am I doing this? No one's telling me to do it. Is it even going to do anything? Is it even going to change anything? And I really felt a lot of resistance around it. And so I think it was like one of those things, like it would feel good for a week or two. And then start getting like agitated again with it. And I would give up. And I was like, just isn't for me right now. And it wasn't until COVID, so almost 5 years ago, that I really committed to a daily practice. And I think it was again because it was hitting one of those moments, like the kids were all home. We were quarantined. It was a small space. I was again feeling really out of control. And when COVID happened, I probably started drinking again more than I should have. And so, it's all those same things. Like, I found myself right back at that same spot that I did, almost a decade ago on that kitchen floor. Only this time I was a little older. My kids were a little older. And in my mind, I was like, I know better than this. I know where this is going. I know this path. I've been down this path before. I'm sure many of you have had a similar thing where you have repeat patterns and you're like, oh, I know this. I know where we're going here. And so when COVID hit and the kids were all home, I decided I'm not really interested in falling apart. I've already done that. And I'm not really interested in trying to control all this and my anxiety ramping up and me screaming at everybody and me becoming the worst version of myself. Like, I'm not really interested in doing that. And so even though I didn't really know what was going to change, I knew that if I just gave myself a shot at sitting on a bolster every day, maybe something small would change. And so I was already getting up early. I'd get up early to write or to go for a little walk. And I decided, I was like, I'm going to get up just a tad earlier, just 5 or 6 minutes earlier. And I'm just going to give myself time and I'm going to sit on a bolster. And I'm not going to worry about like hand gestures. I'm not going to worry about how I sit. I'm just going to sit and just breathe. And in the beginning, I would set a timer for 7 minutes. I don't know why I picked 7. I think there was something about an odd number. Like 5 felt too short, 10 felt like too long. I was like, 7 minutes, I think I can do. And so I did 7 minutes, and it was really hard to get back into it. It was really, really hard. I'm not going to lie and say to you like, oh, I sat down and all of a sudden I became a new person. Like, that's not how it works. And slowly, like really slowly, After a few months, I started to notice a little shift, a tiny shift, and that was enough to just keep me going. And it was really that my body stopped speaking to me when I'd sit down, right? Like my back or my knees or my feet would stop like twitching and feeling so uncomfortable. And my body kind of settled down. My mind started settling down. And I started to find that my timer would go off and I'd be like, oh, I just felt like I'm not going to say it just felt like I sat down, but it went by really quickly. And I started feeling like I could extend the length. And so then extended it to just 11 minutes, again, another odd time. And over that course of a year, I really started to see small changes and I think this is the most important thing. It wasn't so much of like what was happening on the meditation bolster. It was what was happening in my day when I get up. There's a muscle that we practice when we sit and meditate, and I'll get into this in a minute, but I could see me being able to use that muscle then in my day-to-day life. So whether it was something going on with the kids or an argument with John Paul or just any choice or reaction I was making, I could make it from a place that felt more in line with who I really wanted to be, the woman that I think that I am, or that I know that I am, instead of from this place of reactivity. And that was how I lived for a majority of my life for 40 some years, was really reactive and really responsive to things. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I started to feel the benefits. And that was almost 5 years ago. And I will say since then, I've also been able to make a lot of other important choices and decisions in my life that I was about to say I think, but I actually know would not have happened had I not had the clarity that meditation provided me. So the decision to stop drinking came because of meditation. The recommitment I've had to my marriage to change the dynamic in my marriage, that I'll talk about another day, that happened because of my meditation practice. And it really opened up a new layer in my marriage that I'm so grateful for, because I think if I didn't have that, we would be in a much different place and it wouldn't feel like I have a real partnership now. And I think also because of that, then I was able to have more help in the home and more support in the home and feel like I had more help. And because of that, then I could start working on other projects. I could launch a business. I could start a podcast. I could do a lot of other things that wouldn't have happened had it not been for my meditation practice. I'm not saying that I don't think you can have a big, beautiful life without meditation and mindfulness. But I am saying that I really think that for many of us, the idea of becoming more aware of ourselves and becoming more aware and conscious of a lot of things in our lives ends up being a catalyst for a lot of positive change in our lives. And it's not always like a one-to-one correlation, like you don't see it in real time, but over time, it sends you down a different trajectory that I do believe if you were instead numbing or on autopilot, you wouldn't have made those choices and you wouldn't end up at the same spot. And yes, I think that my life is still chaotic and I still have 4 kids that I'm trying to manage and I still have struggles in my marriage and I still have struggles with, my body image or the way I eat or the way I take care of myself. Yes, to all of that. Like, I'm still the same me. Life is still lifey. Nothing is by any means perfect. So please don't get this misconstrued. But I feel so much more empowered and centered and grounded to be able to maneuver through these life situations and these moments and respond in a way that feels really good to me. So while the outside may not always feel great, internally, me maneuvering through the world feels really good. And I will tell you that for those of you listening, if there's any kind of like chaos in your life right now, and I'm saying that because we all have it, and I don't know what that is for you, whether it's like marital stuff or career stuff, financial stuff, like whatever, like that little thing of chaos in your life that feels unsettling. If that even stayed, but that the woman you were who showed up in that situation was really grounded and centered, you would handle it so differently and it would feel so differently. So I think sometimes we worry so much about changing external things. We worry so much about and focus so much of our time and our attention on controlling our children and what's going on with them, or worrying about our partnerships, or worrying about our careers, and trying to always hand our hand at puppeteering things around us. I know you know what I'm talking about. As women, we just do this. We sort of like manipulate the world around us. And that is never going to work. Like it just doesn't work. Like it will always be out of your control. Something will always be just out of your grasp. Things will always be changing. That's just a fact, like the law of the world that we're living in. So the only thing we can do is instead notice how we are in those moments and come back home to ourselves and feel grounded and centered within ourselves, because that's the only thing that we actually do have any type of agency or power or control over. And so meditation and mindfulness really just opens up that tool of awareness and of consciousness to feel more centered and grounded in all of the chaos in our lives. So anyway, that's sort of how I got into it. And because I have seen it totally transform my life. Again, not necessarily on the external, like no one on the outside would be like, wow, this is a black and white different world for Katy. It very much looks the same. I just feel differently. And that makes all the difference. And because I've seen that happen, and I've seen that happen for so many people I know, I 100% show up on that bolster every single day because I'm not giving up that feeling. And I just want you to know, like, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to move through some of that resistance, right? Like your body's going to speak to you. Your mind is going to tell you this is dumb. Your back is going to hurt. Your knees are going to feel a certain way. I'm not saying this to be like negative. I'm just telling you, like, that's what happens. It takes a lot of effort and I've talked about this before. There's this thing of like, your body craves the comfort. It craves what it knows. Even if what it knows is bad for you, even the situation's bad, like it does not want to change. And so to be able to like step out of like the river, I always say this, like the river of change, like to step out of it takes an enormous amount of effort. And that's really what we're doing here. We're just stepping out of that. We're stepping out of autopilot. We're stepping out of the unconscious and stepping into the conscious. We're waking up. We're becoming more aware. We're becoming more accountable. It takes a lot of effort. And so, of course, there's going to be a lot of resistance around it. So if you feel that resistance, it's not because you're bad at it. It's because something is happening. It's because something's happening. And so if you feel that resistance, I just want to invite you, even listen to this now, if you're feeling a little bit of resistance, like, I don't know if this is for me. I just want to invite you that moment that your body's like, oh, is the moment change happens. Okay. And so I just want you to stick with it a little bit longer, because I promise you're most likely on the cusp of something really great that you can't see on the other side. You just got to get around that little corner. And like, I'm so grateful for myself that year of COVID that I didn't quit, that I didn't stop, because I would have missed so many wonderful, beautiful things had I said, you know what, this just isn't working for me. I'm not getting that dopamine hit I wanted. My foot is falling asleep. You know what, I'm not going to do it. I got to get a snack. I need some coffee. We are not listening to our minds. We are not listening to those stories. If you are having them, or if you have them on this, as you practice this, just know that it's normal and you are right at the cusp of something great. Okay, so what is mindfulness? Like, what does that even mean? So there is a mindfulness teacher who I adore, John Kabat-Zinn. If you are familiar with him, I'm sure you know why I love him so much. If you're not, I highly suggest when you're done listening to this, like grab one of his books, look him up, listen to a lecture of his. Like, he's just a wealth of information and wisdom. And he has a definition of mindfulness that I love. And he says that mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding. Okay, let's listen to that again. So mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So what's he saying? Like, what's John? It's a lot of words, John. What is he saying? What's he saying here? All he's saying is that it is awareness. We all know what awareness is. It's taking off the blinders. It's becoming aware, right? It's becoming conscious of something we were unconscious of before, through the act of paying attention on purpose. Like we're doing this intentionally. We aren't doing this passively. We're intentionally trying to do this in the present moment, right now, in this moment, not in what happened yesterday, not in what happens tomorrow, but like in this exact moment, like right now for you. You're right now, you, the person that you are, like listening to this, like as your feet are either hitting the floor, you're driving the car, like this exact moment that you're in, you're just paying attention on purpose, non judgmentally. So, not having a reaction to it or any thoughts about it. We're just observing it in the service of self understanding and wisdom. And I think that's such a beautiful part, that ending in the service of self understanding and wisdom, because there's really nothing else that we do in our lives that has no other goal or objective other than just simply gaining self understanding and wisdom. That's it. Like we're doing this just to learn about ourselves, just to become more aware, not to become the best meditator, right? Like the goal of this isn't to be like, I am so good at sitting for 7 minutes or 11 minutes and my feet don't fall asleep. Gold star for you. Like that is not the point of this. The point of this is simply self understanding and wisdom. I don't know anything else that we do in our world right now. Like we are so focused on achievement and a collection of things, homes, houses, purses, right? Or degrees, that this is just such a breath of fresh air that the only goal of this is wisdom and self-understanding. As we think about awareness, as John was saying, like mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention. So what is awareness? So awareness is the understanding that there is you having a thought, right? Like right now, there's me speaking, as you listening, but then you're aware that you're listening. So who is the person that's witnessing the experience? So like when you have a feeling that you get angry, or you're gonna like, I don't have a moment, for example, that you lose your patience. I'm just using this because I do this a lot. You lose your patience with your children, and you're gonna go react or respond in a way that maybe you're not proud of. And then you have this moment, like you're aware that you're doing it. You know what I'm talking about? It was that awareness that I had when I was on that kitchen floor and I could see myself not being able to move and feeling paralyzed. It's that other I. It's like you can say, I am so mad, but who's the person witnessing that I'm so mad? Like, who is that? Who's the I? Right? Because, and when we start to do that, and we start to separate ourselves from our thoughts or our feelings, we recognize that we are not our thoughts. We are not our feelings. We are not our reactions. We are not this physical body. You are not just wife or mother or daughter, or like, I'm not just Katy, like these pronouns that we have. Like we are, who we are is something different. And who we are is a whole other concept that's so much bigger. And I think maybe that's the purpose of life. I don't really know about understanding who is the witnesser, who is the self witnessing the self. Who is that? Who is the capital S? But awareness really is just that gift of understanding that there's a separation there. You're aware of that it's happening. Not that it's not going to happen, not that you're not going to yell at your kids, but that you're aware that you're doing it. So many of us, myself included, move through life on autopilot. We are really focused on the doing of things, right? Our culture is really focused on being productive, doing things. And so we move really quickly through our life, focused head down on getting from A to B, Y to Z, starting school to get the degree, doing this, starting the career to get the house, or whatever it may be. Like we're really focused on doing that. It's very easy to become numb and unconscious to the fact that we're maneuvering through the world. And so a majority of us are really living kind of asleep, just with our head down, tunnel vision, moving from one thing to the next. We have become humans, as they say, like humans doing, not human being. And so awareness is this idea of no longer being in the doing, but in just being in the being, just existing and just becoming aware of it. And that doesn't mean that you still can't have a really active life. It doesn't mean you still can't have goals. It doesn't mean you can't push yourself. In fact, I find that people who are really aware and do practice mindfulness, I know there can be this idea, there's this passivity there, but it's actually the opposite. It's that clarity gives you even more focus and more drive. It makes you even more efficient. Not that that's the goal, but it ends up being a byproduct. And so I'm not telling you not to want to go do things or not want to achieve things or go out and, accomplish things in the world. By all means, the world needs you to go out and accomplish things. But having awareness of self as you move through that is just going to make you move from a more aligned place that doesn't require so much pushing and so much dis-ease. And it will feel better for you and better for the people around you. Mindfulness and meditation often get intertwined. I always think about it as like mindfulness is something that we practice in our everyday life. And I know there are different people who would say different ways about it. I'm just sharing with you like the way I sort of interpret it. Like meditation is the practice of sitting down and being mindful. And then mindfulness is the everyday awareness that we carry with us. At least that's how I look at it. So there is the formal practice of sitting and meditating, which we'll talk about in a second. But what I think is just as important, if not more important, is this idea of continuing our meditation practice off of our mats and off of all our bolsters and in our really everyday lives. And that's, I've shared with you earlier, like that's where I saw the biggest change in my life. And so I don't want you to think about this as something that you're going to sit down and do for 7 minutes and all of a sudden it's done. This is something that we weave into our everyday life. And there's every moment of our life is an opportunity to become more conscious and more aware and practice this mindfulness. And so whether it is we're washing our dishes and you are noticing the soap on your hands, or you feel the warm water rushing over your hand, or you're driving in your car to go pick up the kids from school and you can do it with your eyes closed. You've done it so many times, but just noticing like, oh, look at that. I'm seeing this street sign. I'm now crossing this street. I know it sounds cheesy, but really like being present. How many times have you gone from point A to point B and not even remember driving the car? Or you're doing a workout and you're running and your mind just like goes to a whole other place. Instead, when you're walking or running or whatever it is, it's like noticing your feet hit the ground or hit the earth and noticing your heel hit first and then the base of your foot and your toes. And like, what did that feel like? And just really paying attention. I think there is this sacredness around that happens in meditation, that we think of the time and this moment, this one moment being so precious as we sit and meditate and try to become more aware. And then we get off of our bolster and it's as if like we're judging what moments in our life are more precious than others. And I think one of the gifts that I've had this year and that I want for all of you too is this understanding of every single moment is worthy of your awareness. Every moment, even the ones that are really painful, they are worthy of your time and they're worthy of your attention and your awareness. And it can be so easy to check out, especially when it feels uncomfortable. And that in those moments that feel the most vulnerable or the most scary is when our practice is probably needed the most. And that even in that moment, you're practicing meditation, you're practicing mindfulness. You can become aware of the anger you're feeling inside, or your hands getting warm, your face getting warm and flushed, the feelings you're wanting to express, or the rage you may be feeling, or the sorrow, or the sadness. Like in those moments, we are really called to stay present. And so when we talk about the difference between meditation and mindfulness, and we think about meditation being something as a practice of sitting on our bolster, I just want to reframe it that yes, you can set a timer and you can sit for 7 minutes, but just because that timer goes off and you move into the day doesn't mean the practice is over. The practice is just beginning. Now we're just putting it into practice. So I don't want you to think of this as something that you're going to go do tomorrow morning and then it's going to be over. You're going to be practicing mindfulness sort of always, which can be kind of overwhelming. And you are going to fall asleep. I do it all the time. We are going to numb out. We are. It just is so how our brains operate. And every time we check out, or every time we, go on, find ourselves on autopilot, the moment you recognize you're on autopilot, that's the practice. Like you did it. You recognized it. You became aware. And maybe it's only for a split second, or maybe it's for, a minute or two. But in that moment, you're probably practicing what mindfulness truly is. So I want to talk really quickly with you about the formal practice of sitting and meditating. And when I say formal, I don't know why I use the word formal because it's not actually formal at all, but it's the actual practice of sitting on your bolster, getting your butt in the seat. Okay. And yes, we can do all these things and we can become aware in our everyday life, but we aren't every day also showing up and getting our butt in our seat. We aren't practicing the muscle that then we can use in our everyday life. So I like to think about it as sitting on my bolster is like going to the gym. And then you are tuning your instrument, you're going to the gym, you're practicing like turning on those muscles so that when you go out in your everyday life, you can put them to use. Okay. So the number one misconception I think that happens around meditation that I see with so many of the people that I work with is this idea of feeling like you're bad at it because your mind just keeps thinking. I think we have this idea that when we sit and meditate, we're not supposed to have thoughts. And people say this all the time to me, like, I'm so bad at meditating. All I do is think, like, my mind never shuts off. Like, oh, I feel bad saying this. Like, it's not that original. We all have them. No one is free of thought. No one. Our brain is never going to shut off. It is hardwired to keep you safe. So it will always be looking for what's wrong, what the problem is, like for predicting the future. That's its job because it was built to keep you safe. So we're never going to be able to turn that off. I don't want you to worry about freeing your mind of thought. What I'm going to encourage you to do is just free your mind from the attachment of that thought. So often we have feelings or something happens in our lives and we go down a rabbit hole and we attach a whole story around it. It happens all the time, especially when we're trying to be quiet and still. Something pops into your mind. I know you know what I'm talking about. Either you see something or you read something and immediately your mind goes to like, oh yeah, I got to call the doctor about that thing. Or did I forget? Like, oh, I forgot I'm so mad at my sister-in-law for this, whatever it is. Like your mind immediately makes up stories and you can very easily go down a rabbit hole. And so what meditation helps us do when we're actually sitting and practicing is not clearing our minds of these thoughts, but of letting go of the attachment of that thought and just letting that emotion, that reaction, that feeling, that thought, just letting it simply go and not continue to stay attached to it and continue to go down this rabbit hole. There's a story of the Buddha that he shares with this idea of these like two arrows. And he says, it's about the pain of suffering. And so it's a little bit different, but I want to share it with you because I think it talks this concept so beautifully. Is this idea that there's two arrows. There's two arrows of suffering, and the first one is unavoidable, but the second one is avoidable. And so the idea is there's an arrow, the first arrow that hits you, and that could be anything in your life, something negative that happens. It's a fight with a partner, you lose a job, whatever it is. It's the first arrow that you get hit with. And that is the suffering, the human suffering that's unavoidable for all of us. We will all have arrows that we get struck with. It's simply unavoidable. The second part of our suffering, though, that is avoidable is our attachment and our stories around that arrow, around that pain, around that suffering. And that is something that as humans, we are doing that we can choose not to do, that we can choose to let go of those stories and not have that attachment. And so when we sit and practice a meditation, we have an opportunity to recognize, oh, there goes my mind again, and just bring it back. I've heard John Kabat-Zinn discuss talking about our minds as this idea of when we're in meditation of so many of us want our minds to be this like glassy water. And if you, or like in an ocean when it's really calm, and if you live anywhere near a body of water or an ocean like I do, you know that it takes the absolute perfect atmospheric conditions for a body of water to be completely still and calm. And that the majority of the time, the waters are really rough. They're moving around. The current's coming in. It's crashing out. It's coming in and out. There's storms. That's just life, just like our minds. And that rather than choosing to ride those waves, we have an opportunity to just get off the ride. I say this a lot, this idea of instead of like riding the waves of all the ups and downs, the roller coasters of our lives, we can choose to just remember that we are the ocean. We're not the wave coming. We don't need to ride the wave because we are the ocean. recognizing that you are so much bigger than that thought. You are so much bigger than whatever that exterior thing is happening that's causing a reaction in you. Who you are is so much bigger than that. And that when you can separate yourself from whatever the arrow was, whatever the thing that triggered you, whatever the emotion was, whatever the thing that got sparked within you, if you can separate yourself from that and become non attached, you have a little bit of freedom. And so when we're sitting and meditating, yes, your mind is going to be on, right? We can't turn our brains off. But what we can do is just notice and create a little space between our thoughts. So it's a little space between the arrows. It's a little space between the waves. It's like, here comes a thought. And before the second one comes in, there's this one little moment, right? Sometimes I think about it as clouds passing by. A cloud is going by. And just like we don't have any attachment, we don't have any judgment on it, we just simply witness it and we let the cloud float off and go on by. We are doing the same thing with our thoughts. And some days it's going to be really cloudy. And other days you're going to get a little glimpse of sun between those two clouds, just a little sliver. And that right there, that's the conscious awareness that we're looking for. And the more we sit and practice this, the greater and the wider that space between clouds becomes. So when I first started practicing, it would be thought after thought after thought after thought. And it most likely will be for you and is for many of us. And the more you continue to practice this, the wider that gap becomes. And you feel a sense of freedom in that space, a little bit of liberation, a little awakening. And then that space, that freedom you felt, that is what you're taking with you off of your bolster. And so then the next time your child snaps at you or something happens, before you go to react, you can practice building in that same space, that same freedom, that same liberation, so that you can move from a place of alignment that feels good to you instead of just reacting. Okay, so we are not going to be able to clear our mind of thoughts. We're not even going to try to do that. We're also not going to tell ourselves that we're bad at this. Like, there's no judgment around ourselves when we meditate. Like, please don't let this be another thing that you feel like you are either bad at or you're trying to perfect. Like, there's no prize at the end of the day for being able to sit on your bolster the longest. Okay, like, we're not trying to be like the best at this. We're just simply, again, as John Kabat-Zinn says, we're just doing this for awareness and for self-understanding and wisdom. That's the only point of this. So you're not bad at this. You're not going to try to get good at it. There's just no judgment around it. We're doing this judgment free. The most important part of this that I think is that we are doing this every day, that we're returning. I say this all the time, that I consider meditation just be a practice of returning. And it is a returning to the present moment, right? So when a thought comes in, we're letting it go, we're returning back to the present moment. For me, I like to stay focused on my breath. So I'm returning back to my breath. And I'm returning back to my seat every single day, even the days you don't want to do it. I really feel like the more consistent you can be with this, and no, I don't feel this way. It is just the way it is. It's just the law. The more you can do this, the more consistent you can be with this, the greater the impact you will feel. It is a daily practice. And I don't say that to set yourself up to feel like you should feel shame around it if you're not doing it every single day. I say that to encourage you to be like, it is a daily thing. And so if every day you can only do it for 2 minutes, that's where you start, because that's what you could do every single day. Because it only works if you show up and do it every single day. Again, it's just like you wouldn't go out and run a marathon without doing a little bit of training every day, or you wouldn't start playing an instrument without tuning it. Our minds and our awareness, our consciousness is that same thing. Like, you need to do it every day or it doesn't work. And so for me, I always think about it, this practice of returning is like, what can you do realistically every single day that is sustainable? And so maybe it's not even 7 minutes, maybe it's 3 minutes, maybe it is 7. I don't care. You pick a number that works for you and just know that every single day you're returning to your seat. So when you think about this from like a logistical standpoint, like, Katy, what are you even talking about? What are we doing here? I want you, especially if you're new at this, to just focus on showing up for yourself every single day. Pick a place in the house, in your house, that feels comfortable for you, that you like. Maybe it is, I do mine by a window because I like getting the morning sun. Maybe for you, there's a corner of the house you really like. Maybe it's by a coffee maker. I don't know, or like some books that you have, or by your pet because you want to be cozy near your dog or cat. Pick a space in the house that has meaning for you, that feels special for you. And then put a little blanket there, a little bolster, a pillow, anything you can sit on. A teacher that I used to love, he would always say, comfort is queen. Okay. So we are not like, this isn't something to suffer through. Get yourself comfortable. Find a seat in the house that you can be comfortable with. And then leave that cushion there as just like a reminder that every day you're showing up for yourself there. And then you simply arrive at your seat. You sit down and don't worry about how you're sitting. I mean, I sit crisscross applesauce because that's what feels good to me. But for the sake of just starting, I don't care about how you sit. Don't worry about where your hands are. Don't worry about like your body shape. Just sit on down. Just like pop a squat, sit down. Okay. And then close your eyes. There's different schools of thoughts about like whether you should have your eyes open, a soft gaze, this, like who cares? None of it really matters. It still works. Eyes closed, eyes open. It all works, which is for, again, the sake of our time together, I want you just to close your eyes and then begin to become aware of your breath. And that's where I begin, is just focusing on my inhale and this one exhale. And just focus on this one inhale and this one exhale. And you just stay there, staying focused on your breath. And then as your mind begins to wander, which it will, we just simply guide it back to the present moment. We don't go down the rabbit hole. We let that thought go and you just bring it back. And as your body starts to tell you it's uncomfortable, we let that go. You recognize it. We say, body, not now, not now. And as your stomach begins to growl, we say, I'll get you a snack later. I'll get you the coffee later. I'm doing this first. You are not in control of me. And you pick a time that works for you and you sit and you stay. And you resist the temptation to move. You resist the temptation to open your eyes. You resist the temptation to check your phone. And you just sit and you stay. And every time a thought rises, you let it go and you come back to your breath. It is that simple. And that's it. And if you do that every single day for the time you've already determined, you're not making this decision before the moment you sit down and you're looking at your timer, like you set the time ahead of time. You know, tonight when you go to bed, tomorrow morning, I'm waking up and I'm meditating for 4 minutes. Or I'm meditating for 15 minutes. You pick the time now. Make the commitment to yourself. And then show up Monday and do it. Show up Tuesday and do it. Show up Wednesday and do it. And no, you are not too busy. And no, you are not just bad at it. And no, there's not the dogs or the kids, or I don't have time because I'm a mom. Like, I get it. We all have things, okay? Everyone's got things. You can find a time to do this. And you guys, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be totally quiet. There are going to be distractions. Okay. Mine a lot would be kids walking on the steps or sitting on my lap. Again, your mind is going to notice it. You hear the dog bark in the background. You hear the coffee maker. You hear your partner showering, annoying the crap out of you, whatever it is. Like you hear the thing. Yes, that's life. Remember, the external things we can't change. So don't set yourself up and be like, I have to find the most perfect quiet spot because I cannot be interrupted during my meditation practice. We cannot hold on to this so tightly. We have to hold this really loosely, okay? And non-judgmentally, and not be so harsh and so strict with it, or it won't work. It's not going to work. Like you can't sustain that. So you find a spot that feels good to you and you set up the best of intentions and you show up for yourself every single day. And whatever happens in the external world around you happens. And you use that as a tool to practice. Because again, as soon as your mind gets attached to something or notices it, it's just another opportunity to practice letting it go. And that's all you're doing is just practicing. Okay. Can you do that? I think you can. I think you can. And I promise you that if you do this and you commit to it and you really show up for yourself, you will start to see other things in your life change. I shared in the beginning of this episode how I thought meditation is the one thing we're all being called to step into this year. I really think it's the number one thing we can do to change our world right now. And I really, truly believe that that is true. Meditation, in the most simplest of terms, means to know thyself. Just to know thyself. That's it. How beautiful a concept. I can't think of anything else we do in our lives for no other purpose than gaining a deeper understanding of who we truly are. We do this work, we sit and meditate every day in hopes of gaining a better understanding of ourselves, not to become better people, not to become a more patient mother or a more supportive partner, not to become a better daughter or a friend. Yes, those will all be byproducts, but that is not at the heart of what this is all about. We do this work simply because deep down, the greatest love we're searching for is our own. But real, true, authentic self love doesn't happen without deep self knowing. The two are intertwined. You can't love that which you truly don't know. So, if what you are searching for this year is a sense of groundedness, being centered, at ease, of self knowing, and of deep, authentic self love, then I invite you to step into this practice, to be brave enough to light a match in the dark blind spots of your soul where you have been too afraid to go before, to learn to sit with yourself and just to be with yourself, not just in the beauty and in the joy, but equally in the pain and the suffering and the heartache and the fear and the loss and the anger. To be brave enough to be with yourself and love yourself in those moments that are the most difficult and the most challenging. Because when we can learn to do that, when we can learn to be with ourselves and not react and not feel a need to control, to fix, or to change, but simply to allow them to be what they are and to learn to love ourselves in those moments, then we can go do that for other people in the world. And then we become an agent of change. And that is what the world is aching for. We need more people in this world who are awake and aware and conscious and who are making change for good. But you cannot do that when you aren't awake and aware. You cannot do that when you don't know yourself. You cannot do that when you are attached to your thoughts or to your ego or to your racing mind. You cannot do that when you're on autopilot. This is the year for you, me, for our friends, our neighbors, our parents, our siblings, our children, all of us to wake up and become more conscious and aware. And so I am inviting you, if you are at all interested, to just begin this practice really simply, with a beginner's mind, with no expectations, with no judgment, with no shame, with no nothing, to just sit with ourselves in the most basic of ways, just sitting. That's it. With nothing more than the goal of just simply to learn to know thyself. Knowing that when you can do that, if that's all that you can do this year, I don't care if you change a diet, I don't care if you stop drinking, I don't care if you get a new job, just to learn to know thyself. That's the most powerful thing that you can do. And it costs you nothing. It does not require a whole overhaul of your life. You're just simply going to learn to know thyself. And from that place of deep awareness and deep knowing and deep presence, you can learn to have a different level of self love and self understanding that then translates to every other thing you do. So often we think of people who meditate or are mindful aware as being passive, maybe even being doormats, just simply allowing things to be because we're just allowing things to be what they are. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Because we allow things to just be what they are, you get such a greater sense of clarity and of empowerment to go off and be a catalyst of change. All of your power and the liberation comes from this awareness. And when you can become more aware, when you can become more conscious, you can become the catalyst of change that the world is needing. And right now, you are being called to do that. I know, no pressure, but you can do this, and I can too. And if we all did our part, I know it would have huge ripple effects in the world. If you are interested in potentially going deeper into this practice, if you are at all interested in meditation or living more mindfully and consciously in this next year, I invite you to join our 4-week I'm calling it a holistic mindfulness program because we're talking about so much more than just meditation, but mindfulness and meditation is the foundation. Like that's it. That's where we begin. And from there, we are building other tools of well-being in order for us, again, to not just work on ourselves. This isn't an indulgent thing, but it's about then being able to be a catalyst of change and making ripple effects in the world. If you are a woman who is looking to be a catalyst of change and make ripple effects in the world for good, this is for you. And if you're just simply someone who's like, I want to feel more centered, I want to feel more grounded, I want to learn to love myself and not feel like I'm constantly chasing myself or running away from myself, this is for you. If you are someone who says, I hate meditation, I can't do it, this is for you. Or if you're someone who's been doing this practice for many, many years, this is an incredible experience to spend 4 weeks together with other women who are trying to live more consciously. You will get a lot of personalized attention from me, a library of tons of resources, and it's just a heck of a lot of fun. We begin January 20th. There is a link in the show notes for more information, or feel free to send me a message. I can't wait to see you there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Happy New Year whenever you are listening to this. And if you are sitting and meditating and going to give this a chance, and going to give this a try, I am so proud of you. I'm so in awe of you. It is really hard to change. It's really hard to try new things. Let me know how it goes. Drop me a message, shoot me a note. I know I'm going to be showing up on my bolster every day this upcoming year. And so if you're getting up tomorrow morning and you're sitting and meditating, I am right there with you. Just feel my energy. I'm right there with you and I'm proud of us. We are doing something really important here. All right. I love you. Go have a beautiful day. And I don't know, let's pay all this energy forward and go do some good things in this world. All right. I will talk to you all next week. Thanks for being here. I love you.